Alrighty everyone, welcome back. Happy Tuesday. It is a fantastic day because we are just hours away from The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 2, also known as Chapter 18, that's going to involve more storytelling around the characters of Bo-Katan, Grogu, Din Djarin, and more, to really kind of advance the story forward. It's just crazy how fast time is flying by, because after this episode, there's only going to be 6 more left, and by mid to late April, Mando Season 3 will come to a close. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing about Kathleen Kennedy over the years is that we have all realized what she has been doing, right? We saw what she did with Luke in The Last Jedi by killing him off, by allowing Rian Johnson to do whatever he wanted to do at the very end of that film. And you guys may or may not know this, but Ridley Scott actually, back in 2017, I believe it was, maybe 2018, he heavily criticized Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy's approach, especially Disney's approach to hiring an independent filmmaker at the time and taking care of Luke, and he went on a full-on rant about The Last Jedi. You guys may or may not have seen that, but look up Ridley Scott, The Last Jedi, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Now that brings us to exactly what's most important today, and how it has a lot to do with Kathleen Kennedy admitting her true feelings about Luke Skywalker and her stance on the Skywalker family tree, and everything related to how the fans perceive the Skywalkers themselves. So let's tap right into all of this. Now, one thing that we do know about Kathleen Kennedy is that she never really thought the Skywalkers were all that important. We know that over the years, everyone, of course, related to, Luke, such as Anakin, Ben Solo, etc., those characters are indeed the core of the story, right? Now, on top of this, with Kathleen Kennedy working on the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew and having issues with those two projects, she recently was able to talk more about the future of Star Wars and her views of Luke Skywalker by stating the following to the community. I just think the character is a burden to deal with. Myself and Leslye believe in moving on away from a character like Luke, and that was my focus for the sequels. He takes away too much limelight of the new characters that we try to focus on, and that is one mistake that I think John and Dave made with the Book of Boba Fett. Luke suddenly appears, and then nobody cares about Din or Boba Fett, even Grogu at the time. Luke Skywalker is the type of character that just gets in the way of proper storytelling, and that's why we felt it was best to shift away from him permanently in our upcoming project Skeleton Crew, which is a post-Return of the Jedi project as well, that we are working on slowly but surely. We feel it's best to move on from a character that is a constant reminder of George's philosophy that myself, John Watts, and Leslye Headland are trying to move away from finally. So let me just stop right here for a second. I think that, obviously, everything related to the character of Luke is hated by the Lucasfilm, affiliates that are very much loyal to Kathleen Kennedy, and a lot of others that are very loyal to Leslye Headland and stuff around those lines. We know that Kathleen Kennedy does not care about Luke. We know that she hates the character of Luke. She's openly said this before, that she was never a big fan of that character, and that she never really wanted to support him through and through after the sequels. And that's why, in case you guys did not know, it was a rough battle for Jon Favreau to even get Luke as a cameo in Mando Season 2. It almost never happened. Kathleen Kennedy was fighting for it to never happen at all, and eventually they came to an agreement and they made it happen at the very tail end of the series, or of that season, right? So here we have it, Kathleen Kennedy admitting her true feelings about her view of Luke. She feels that Luke gets in the way of proper storytelling, gets in the way of telling, of course, a story about new characters and stuff around those lines. Now, some people may agree with that, some, but I don't think the majority think that way. I think that as long as you have proper storytelling that surrounds Luke, it makes a lot of sense. Again, I've pointed this out several times. I think that Luke serves a great position in the Star Wars franchise, because it's not just about him, it's about him passing on his knowledge to others. It's why I liked the training sessions with Grogu. It's why I liked Luke Skywalker really kind of picking up Grogu at the very end of Mando Season 2, because it goes to show you that there is not only development happening within Luke himself, but across the entire galaxy, and trying to pass on his knowledge was the true message by John and Dave. And John and Dave, by the way, they know what is too little and what is too much, and they balance that out perfectly in Mando Season 2. With the Book of Boba Fett, some fans may agree that it shifted the focus away from Boba Fett himself, but you guys gotta remember that originally the Boba Fett series, believe it or not, was supposed to be like a very small, minuscule mini-series. We're talking like 4 episodes long. Originally, that's what it was supposed to be, like a little filler in between Mando 2 and 3. And then they expanded it to really making it a couple of episodes longer. And in that process, they felt, well, let's dedicate an entire episode to Luke and Ahsoka, as well as Din Djarin, to kind of just fill in the gaps there a little bit. Now, Kathleen Kennedy expressing her true concern over Luke and what she's doing with the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew gets even all the more involved. She goes on to elaborate, Star Wars isn't always about the Skywalkers, and the Skywalkers should never be that important to the actual story. If I were John and Dave, I would completely stop using Luke Skywalker from appearing in anything further. It's my best advice for them to create better stories, since Luke isn't all that important of a character. It's a character that just has that legendary name that so many fans are used to hearing. Myself and Leslye are focused on creating a better, more outlined bloodline for the Acolyte that we believe will be a better and more complex story than that of the Skywalkers. It's in my full interest to keep myself distant from using Luke so that we can focus on real storytelling techniques and more better outlets for the fans to play at here. So, here's the other thing that Kathleen Kennedy puts out here that I think is a big problem, is that yes, let me just say one thing, guys. I know that Star Wars does not always have to focus on the Skywalkers. That's common sense. We get that. We get that it's not always about Luke, it's not always about Anakin, but there is no doubt that they are the core of the story. They are the glue of the Star Wars franchise. But at the same exact time, it doesn't mean that we always have to focus on them every single show. I get that. I understand that. But what Kathleen Kennedy is saying is that Luke is not important, Luke is pretty much nobody, and he just steals the limelight away from other characters. Not necessarily true either. Maybe it's because we're contrasting Luke's appearance to characters that maybe aren't all that well written. This is why a lot of fans preferred Luke's presence over Poe Dameron, Finn, Rey, and stuff like that in the sequels. Because they weren't as well written. If they were very well written characters, through and through on a consistent basis, I think fans would have found that to be easier to deal with having the absence of Luke. So overall, guys, I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say about Kathleen Kennedy's thoughts on Luke Skywalker and George Lucas. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Night to moon, we hear them moans again. No.